In a world full of distractions, there is one big question on every dog owner's lips.
How do I become more than just the person holding the other end of the leash?
We all get dogs with a dream in mind, a vision of the future. And if right now your everyday reality isn't quite that picture you had in mind, you are in the right place.
It really doesn't have to be this way.
You absolutely can and will be more to your dog than just the person who gets in between them and the world.
The key is you need to be more sexy.
More sexy than the neighbourhood cat.
More sexy than the jogger in the park.
More sexy than that half-eaten hamburger they just found on the floor.
And yes, even more sexy than the dog across the road.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Lauren.
Together we're Absolute Dogs.
And you're listening to the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast, the podcast that teaches you how to be the very best dog owner your dog could ever wish for and to have a really well-behaved dog too. And today we are talking about possibly one of the most important things in terms of you realizing just how much you can do for your dog, and that is when they get into their senior years.
Now, only recently I filled in a quiz to check out one of my dogs and some things I could be using for her, and one of the things that really shocked me was actually she could be considered senior. Now, What do we consider to be a senior dog, Tom? Like, how does it work? Like, what's the way of thinking as a vet and a professional in the dog world? Like, how do we feel?
So the interesting thing is that it varies depending on the size of your dog. So, you know, the giant breeds, they're going to be classed as senior much earlier, whereas the tiny breeds, they're going to be classed as senior a little bit later. But as a general rule, if you think that when your dog is around 7 or 8 years old, we can start to consider them as a senior dog. And in doing that then, when they're, 7 or 8 years old, actually it can have some real big impacts in terms of their quality of life, their quantity of life, and the relationship that you have with them.
Now, when we think about our senior dogs, I know that for me, I've had some beautiful experiences, lovely experiences with my own senior dogs and also clients' senior dogs. Yeah. And I suppose it's mostly about adapting the experience, editing the experience, changing what we do potentially to enable our senior dogs to live out the best years that they can live.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if we were to think about what are the signs of, what some of you may have heard of as cognitive decline, canine cognitive decline, those signs of brain aging that happen as our dogs go into their senior years. Well, actually, there are numerous ones. So the first is change in responses. So how they would normally respond to something, they don't respond in the same way, and that doesn't necessarily mean they don't respond at all. You might find that they become fearful of things that they weren't previously fearful of. You might find that they get weirdly overexcited about things that they didn't previously get overexcited about.
Another that I just have to relate to so much, because in Poppy's senior years, this one was testing, stretching, increased vocalization to the level that was like insane. Like, she would just stand there. You guys will all know this. She would stand there staring at the wall, and then she would do a and then her head would go up and there would be a long dramatic pause. And then about 10 seconds later, she would do another one. And then apparently for nothing, definitely couldn't work out a reason, and almost would get stuck in this little pattern of vocalizing at the wall or at nothing, and pattern of vocalizing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
increased.
Characteristic. And, another one would be like a loss of joy, just generally maybe not kind of as joyful as they normally would be, whether that, you think of as a, wagging tail, or maybe they don't get up to greet you when you come home from being out. A loss of learning. So things that they previously knew how to do, they no longer know how to do.
A dog who used to be cool with being alone and actually now is a little bit more worried, a little bit more anxious, a little bit more separation isn't so cool for them. They want to follow you everywhere. They want to be in your skin. They literally are trying to hound you around the house.
Next up would be a change in sleep-wake cycles. And, this for sure, having a couple
Poppy.
of senior dogs in my time in the middle of the night getting stuck in between the chair legs because they've become disorientated.
And for Poppy, it would be literally middle of the night. She would just decide about 3 or 4 a.m. and she would be doing this at the wall.
Yeah.
And you know what, just changed how she was. And then in the daytime would be fast asleep all day long and would be sleeping when she was normally busy.
Yeah.
So definitely changes. We definitely had to get used to that. Everyone was a bit disorientated by that at first.
Yeah. Next up would be a change in toileting. So, you know, characteristic of your senior dogs, you might find that they forget their toilet training. And guys, we're telling you about the signs to tell you about how common these are, and then we're going to tell you what to do about them.
The other thing is that your dog may have one of these or all of these, or your dog may have none of these. You know what? For me, I would certainly, let's say I took Poppy. Changing responses, yes. She had no loss of joy. The loss of joy was not apparent for her. Vocalizing, yes. Separation, yes. Disorientation, not until her very final, probably 6 months. So after then, although could we consider the barking at the wall as disorientation? Yes, possibly. So loss of learning, on the whole, she's pretty darn good. Change in sleep wake, very, very, very apparent. Toileting, certainly. Every now and again, she would just squat and you'd be like, why are you weeing here? This is not the place to wee.
Yeah.
And definitely saw some gentle change in interactions, and actually some good ones as well. Some of her changes in interactions, she started to really enjoy the company of other dogs, which she didn't as a young dog. So you know what? Actually, some of the changes, like they vary, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, if we think about how common these are, well, there was a study done in 2001 by Nielsen et al. And what they found is that dogs over 10 years old, 25% of owners with a dog over the age of 10 reported 2 or more of these signs. When you got to 15 years of age or older, 60% of owners reported this. And this is, you know, owner reporting. So this requires the owners that they asked to have been aware of their dogs. And
vigilant of it.
Which means that probably, you know, these numbers are on the low side, and these numbers are actually higher in reality. So, you know, what's going on from a game changer perspective in senior dogs? Well, first things first, they have a reduction in their sensors. So their hearing reduces, their eyesight reduces.
And you'll notice this because they're not maybe quite as aware as you thought they were, or they maybe don't quite see you in certain places, or maybe they're not, you're behind them and they look, but they don't locate you because they're not necessarily hearing correctly. Absolutely. And so these things you start to notice, it's just those subtle changes.
Next up would be a reduction in taste. So this is the sense that we often forget about changing with age, but the reality is because they have a reduction in hearing, they have a reduction in vision, and they have a reduction in taste, these dogs can actually be, senior dogs can be harder to reward at times because, you know, they don't necessarily like the taste of their food quite so much. Maybe they can't locate their food as easily if you throw it. Again, there's stuff that we can do about this. We're going to talk about that later. Their
tolerance of frustration, I for sure saw that with Poppy changing. Like, you know what, she definitely was not so patient. The older she got, to be honest, the more demanding she got. It was dealing with a different dog in lots of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And they become less flexible, and that's both in their bodies but also in their minds.
Not so pliable.
Yeah, they get really dependent on their routine, and you know what everybody tells you is, oh, you've got to have a routine for your senior dog. The reality is that, let's say you decide your routine is feed them at 10, walk them at 12, feed them at 5. Well, what happens is they start to bark and get agitated at 10 minutes to those time points, but then it comes forward every day. Before long, actually, it can be a totally different time, and they're anticipating your routine because you set that routine. And so that's actually the opposite of what we should do with senior dogs. Next up, they become more pessimistic. This is in part because one thing characteristic of cognitive decline, whether we're talking humans with dementia and Alzheimer's or whether we're talking dogs with cognitive decline, is that there's an increase in anxiety. And also these dogs, they have reduced hearing, they have reduced vision, and so everything's a bit more novel. Things take them by surprise, which can make them more pessimistic again.
And I think when we're considering this, I mean, we also need to consider what situations we're putting our senior dogs into, and actually how we are considering all of these things. For example, with Poppy, actually in her final years, she didn't really go off site at home a lot, other than to very, very safe places. I wouldn't have put her out in big public spaces, or I wouldn't have taken her on really crazy long car journeys, because those weren't things that I felt were right for her level of I suppose senior behaviour and what she had. So she always had lots of company. She was always around here a lot, but she didn't actually go on any big sort of out, like into big public spaces.
Novel places.
Spaces that I felt she wouldn't have been best protected.
So what can we do about this? Well, the cool thing is there's a lot we can do about this. And really, the way that we can best help our senior dogs comes from two worlds. It comes from the world of games, and it comes from the world of nutrition. Now, first things first, effectively, what we need to do with our senior dogs is actually treat them a little bit more like puppies. So we need to do lots of optimism games.
Play lots of enrichment games with them. Do lots for their food. Ditch the bowl. Ditch the routine.
Teach them new tricks. And, there's that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It needs to be changed to actually, you must teach an old dog new tricks, because what you're doing is you're making you're kind of returning to that spaghetti-like brain that's more flexible, that's learning new things, that's able to retain learning. And what is really happening on a physiological level is that their neurons are dying. Throughout their life, their neurons are getting used less and less. And if they don't use them, they lose them. And so by getting our senior dogs to use and do things that they wouldn't normally do, actually they start to regain some of that ability, and all through the games and the way that you interact with them.
All of the games that we play in the training academy, all of the games we play in Sexy Than a Squirrel, so many games.
On the Facebook page.
Lots and lots on the Facebook page, loads on YouTube, loads of you guys loving YouTube. So actually there's loads of opportunity for you to learn the games, whether that be through the training academy, whether that be through Sexy Than a Squirrel, whether that be through the Facebook page. You know what? There is a game for that.
And the other thing that we think is really important for senior dogs is to actually ditch that routine. Ditch the bowl.
I think for
ditch
Poppy,
the routine.
For two different reasons. The massive one on ditch the bowl for her was actually she couldn't stand for a prolonged period. So her brother, I remember chatting to her brother's owner, and she said to me one of his biggest struggles was standing for a prolonged period over a dinner bowl. Poppy in her last 5 years didn't have a dinner bowl.
No.
And I remember even to the day that I know this is always a sad topic. Poppy was put to sleep, and even to this day, I feel really good about the way it was all done.
Yeah.
And that was because it was done in such a prepared way. She was still chewing and eating and like finding little bits of food, even though she'd lost all her mobility, because she was always loving doing that. So even to that day, she couldn't stand still for prolonged periods, but she could scatter feed. Yeah. She could have chew sticks and be laying down. But what we did was we varied how she was always fed. So she never had that collapse over a bowl. And yet what I've realised is so many dogs do have the collapse over the bowl, and yet owners don't think to maybe change it by not feeding in the bowl anymore. So like it, and
like
what an enrichment for a dog.
Fix as well.
It hits both, right? It hits the physical need of the dog, but it also really hits the mental need of our senior dogs. And for goodness sake, like why don't we like educate everyone around here? Like let's think about this, because this is something that's so simple and keeps our senior friends with us for a bit longer. Like it's such a nice way through.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we think about ditching the routine, and how if we don't have a routine, if we totally lose the routine, then actually we get rid of we boost their tolerance of frustration, we boost their flexibility, but also they don't have anything to be frustrated about, because there's no anticipation there, right?
Massive.
Next up, just as you would with a puppy, don't rely on the taste of the treat to reward them. Instead, think about what experience can we create with that food? Can we maybe roll it? Can we hide it so they have to sniff it out? Can we get them to catch it? Yeah. Remember that if they're using their sensors, they're less likely to lose their sensors. And so get them using it, test them, challenge them, grow them, and their body will adapt. The body will become what it practices every day. What a lot of senior dog owners are told is to not take them for walks, don't try and teach them anything new, and we make their lives even more bland and routine based. And then it's no surprise that they develop these struggles, because the brain is adapting to what we present it with.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, what you've got to do is always look at the individual, and then I think create the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they're just some of the games that we would use in working with senior dogs.
And if you know of anyone with a senior dog, if you have a senior dog yourself, if you know of anyone whose dog is coming into these senior years, I suppose, please share the podcast. Yeah. Please make sure they know about this one. You can share it to your Facebook page, your Instagram page. You know what? You can share it, and it's literally, it's a free opportunity for growing this understanding.
Yeah, and the thing is that the world and the current understanding of senior dogs is doing them a real disservice. It's doing them a real disservice because owners are being told to settle for what they're seeing. And the reality is that if you set the expectation a little bit higher, if we adapt the way that we interact with them through games to what is going on in their brain and in their behavior, actually we unlock greater levels of quantity of life, greater levels of quality of life, and you kind of hit new relationship heights in your dog's senior years. Now, that's the game side of things, but also nutrition is very important for senior dogs. And in fact, there's research out there that I can bet that your trainer's not told you about, that your vet's not told you about, that, isn't all over Facebook, and yet it is a game changer. And if we just run through some of the research on senior dogs and what can be achieved with them now. First of all, study in 2002.
I have to say, Tom's getting geeky now. He loves this. If you haven't heard Tom get geeky, he loves it.
I'm so passionate about what can be achieved with senior dogs.
You're going to love this.
Kottman et al., a research group in 2002, found that oxidative damage that is going on in your dog's brain and in their nervous system as they become older. What they did is they gave two groups of dogs, a young group and a senior group. They gave two groups of dogs some challenges. They asked them to effectively like cognition challenges. So they were like discrimination tasks and things like that, super fun things like that. And basically they got a score on their cognitive ability. Then what they did is they put the young group and the senior group on an antioxidant-rich diet. And they then tested them again after they'd been on the antioxidant-rich diet a little while. And what they found is that the young group, they scored the same in the tests before and after. The diet made no difference. The senior group, they scored better on the cognition tests after having the antioxidant supplemented diet. So it shows that not only are antioxidants important for prevention, they can turn back time when it comes to senior dogs.
Isn't it? I mean, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That is exciting.
And then we think about these antioxidants in a different context. And interestingly, this study was looking at whether dogs would be a useful model for studying dementia and Alzheimer's in humans. And it was a study in 2018 by a research group led by Pan. And I'll just quote the study. These results indicate that long-term supplementation with antioxidants and B vitamins can have cognition-improving effects and supports the use of nutritional strategies in targeting brain aging associated risk factors as an intervention to delay cognitive aging. So in other words, antioxidants and B vitamins delay cognitive aging in dogs, and that's what they were hoping would be the same in humans. Now, another study that, again, you've probably not heard about, but there's actually extensive research going on in relation to this particular superfood in humans, is lemon balm. Lemon balm has been shown to improve cognitive function and agitation and anxiety associated with Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline in humans. And so this is now an area of significant clinical study.
Crazy.
And actually there are clinical trials going on right now looking at giving lemon balm to humans with Alzheimer's to
turn back time.
Yeah, to identify this has actually been a therapeutic option. And so again, lemon balm for dogs, very, very interesting. And in fact, there's no studies on lemon balm specifically in relation to senior dogs. But, we've got some pretty cool anecdotal evidence that when we released Calm Canine...
It was one of the quickest things, actually, that we had reports on, wasn't it?
It was one of the things that came back first from people. I mean, Calm Canines transformed dogs all over the world,
and
of whatever the age.
Hugely transformed. And one of the quickest things that we received within, literally weeks.
Yeah.
We had many, many emails
from senior dog owners
saying, I don't know what you got in this that is helping my dog, but he's a completely different dog.
He's like a puppy again. It's turned back time, and that lemon balm is what's driving that. Now, of course, you're thinking, oh my word, that's amazing. Cognition can be improved with diet. But what about, their senses? What about eyesight, for example? Well, the interesting thing is that there are actually studies to show, like, for example, the one that I've got in mind here, in 2016, Wang et al., what they did is they supplemented dogs with lutein, vitamin C, and vitamin E, 3 antioxidants, right? And what that showed is improvement in vision, improvement in retinal function, and less decline decline in refractive error, which is a component of vision. And so again, what we're seeing is that actually adding antioxidants to dogs' diets when they've already got vision impairment actually, turns back time.
Crazy.
And so you think about the implication of that in preventing it, and it's huge. And so this led us, on a bit of a journey. We're very passionate about senior dogs. But myself, I've had Peggy, who she passed away I think she was a week shy of 18, and Poppy, how old was she?
Poppy was 17. So it was pretty.
It's a passion area of ours. We don't believe that any dog should ever be lost.
I think the other thing that I know that you're proud of with Peggy, and I'm hugely proud of with Poppy, is that she really was on no medication. And I get that you as a vet and working in the vet profession, that obviously medications are part of what you guys do, and at the same time, it isn't something we ever really want our dogs to need, right? Like we don't want our dogs to. So with all due respect, we also would prefer to keep our dogs in a place where they don't need to have huge pain relief all the time, or lots and lots of different steroid or anything else that we might need to give an older dog. And so for me, I was always hugely proud of this, and I know that you were too, Tom. So for me, there's a lot of good we can give without going down the prescription
Absolutely.
route.
That's not, there are things that you can do that you're in control of as a dog owner for when your dog reaches that 7 years old.
You get to be controlled. You don't have to go for the prescription. You don't have to go and feel like your dog has to go on something that might be very unhealthy for them, and at the same time will help with some of the struggles you're having. And I think this is really empowering for a dog owner.
What you do now impacts tomorrow. And so, what we created, because it's a passion area of ours, is we created Calm Canine Senior Boost, which is effectively a formula of superfoods that contain those antioxidants, that contain those B vitamins,
all of those
lemon
things.
balm.
I remember chatting to you a while back, Tom, and this was one of our AO Canine chats ages and ages ago. And I remember saying to you, I really want this, and I really want that, and I really want this, and I really want that. And by the time we put that in, and then we grab that, and then we make sure we go shopping and we pile in this. Actually, this just doesn't feel doable because there's so many things I need to add on a daily basis to make sure that my dog's diet is looking as good as I want it to be. Like, it was quite complex to try and pull all of that together.
Yeah, and when you think about senior dogs and how they're often not necessarily as into their food as they were because they've lost taste, and then you're thinking, I'm going to be adding these vegetables and blueberries and all these other things, and actually it then becomes incompatible with the animal that you're working with, right? Because they're now refusing it. So we created Calm Canine Senior Boost. It's a powder. It means that in a scoop a day, you can know that you're covering the lemon balm, the antioxidants, the B vitamins, the probiotic requirements of a senior dog.
So many different areas that when you look at them individually, they're tough to find all individually. And by the time you've put that one together and that one together, and that doesn't work with that, and that doesn't work with that, and then that doesn't mix. So you know what? I found it quite complex trying to source my own.
Exactly. And so we created Calm Canine Senior Boost. It's available right now. It's actually already, we've been getting insane reviews about how it's transforming senior dogs.
The thing that excites me as well, there's huge amounts there for really great brain condition. So I think there's lots of good stuff there to enable our dogs to stay fit, healthy, and young for as long as they possibly can.
Absolutely. I'm just seeing if I can find just a couple of the reviews that have come in, because they're pretty incredible. Here we go. So this one from Irene, she says, our old Bichon Frise was waking us up every couple of hours all through the night, including panting and crying. Since giving him Calm Canine Senior Boost, he goes all through the night, every night, has stopped panting and crying, and is back to his old self. Fantastic result. Bliss. No more sleepless nights.
You consider how much that changes. Wonderful Irene's lifestyle with her little dog. Her little dog's happier, our little Bichon here. And Irene, for me, someone taking away my sleep, I know it because of Eliza, someone taking away my sleep is it's painful. It's painful. So actually, that's beautiful.
And we Marilyn as well. She's just sent in a review, and she says, smells nice, he likes it, and in only a couple of weeks it seems to have stopped nighttime barking in my almost 16-year-old boy. I've already recommended it. So guys, if you've got a dog who's over 7 years old and you're thinking, oh my word, I did not know about all this, I'm processing it all, what do I do? You know what? Play games with your dog, yeah?
Number one, play games with your dog.
Ditch the bowl, ditch the routine.
And absolutely don't feel guilty about ditching the bowl or the routine. Your dog will thank you for it. Enrichment, number 4. So think enrichment, whether that's through the top 3 or whether it's something unique that you're going to do. Yeah. Think enrichment and think hard on enrichment. And for me, number 5 would certainly be consider what you're feeding, how you're feeding, and what you're supplementing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so much good you can do here. There's the power of so much good. It's in a scoop.
Yeah.
It literally, listen to what Irene said and Marilyn here have said. And if you have used the AO Canine Senior Boost, please leave us a review. Mm-hmm. It's what enables other people to feel the opportunity that they can try it.
Yeah.
And I think that this is powerful, knowing that we're going to change so many dogs' lives with this information.
Absolutely. So to get hold of Senior Boost, all you've got to do is head to a-ok9.com and grab yourself a pouch. We'll ship it right out to you and you can get started on your Senior Boost journey.
An amazing opportunity for your dog. And at the same time, even if you just manage to do the top 4 and take away lots of the cool learning here, I think it's a really special senior episode.
No dog is ever lost. And with that, guys, that was this episode of the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast. Go give your senior dogs hugs, or even better, play a game with them. We'll see you next time. And remember, stay sexy. Hey, before you go, have you taken part in the worldwide Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge?
It's a 25-day online video program, huge energy, amazing community, and over 6,000 people are already taking part.
The only question is, you know where you are today, where do you want to be 25 days from now? Head to absolutedogs.me/sexy.